Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canada is facing a crime wave. Since the Prime Minister was elected, violent crime is up 32%. Violent gang crime is up a staggering 92%. And in 2021, there were 124,000 more violent criminal incidents compared to 2015 when this Prime Minister was elected. This is not a coincidence. Whether it's the Liberals' catch-and-release bail policies, eliminating mandatory jail time for serious gun crime, and drastically expanding house arrest for such serious offenses as sexual assault and kidnapping, the crime wave is a direct result of failed soft-on-crime Liberal policies. The only way to defeat this violent crime wave is to defeat this soft-on-crime Liberal government and elect a Conservative government committed to standing up for victims and holding violent criminals to account to the fullest extent of the law.
The honourable member for St. Pembroke.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years of incompetence and corruption, Canada is broken. Trust in government, broken. Ministerial responsibility, broken. After 8 years, our military has been decimated. Military procurement, broken. Military recruitment, broken. After 8 years, violent crime is rampant. The bail system, broken. The overwhelmed court system, broken. After 8 years, overdoses are killing thousands. Addiction support, broken. Safe supply ideology, broken. After 8 years of this Prime Minister and his cronies, Canada is broken. Canadians are being killed in random attacks. Canadians are being killed by dangerous drugs. Canadians are dying deaths of despair. After 8 years, we went from sunny ways to dark days. It doesn't have to be this way. Conservatives have a plan to turn the hurt Canadians are feeling into the hope they need. After 8 years of division, 8 years of wedge politics, we'll bring Canadians together, united, strong, and free.
Hear, hear. The member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this government's inflationary spending, Canadians are barely getting by, while Liberal insiders and high-priced consultants have never had it so good. After 8 years, Canadians have been struggling to cope with 40-year high inflation. After 8 years, 1.5 million Canadians have visited food banks in a single month. But after 8 years, this government doesn't care. Instead of helping Canadians, they decided to hand out over $100 million in contracts to their friends at McKinsey & Company, and that number keeps climbing. In fact, after 8 years, we still don't know the full amount awarded to McKinsey because this Liberal government refuses to say. But we do know that of the 23 contracts awarded, 20 of them were granted in a non-competitive environment and hand-picked by this government. We need to know how much has been handed out to McKinsey and the influence they have on our government. Canadians deserve answers, and we won't back down.
You're here. Well done.
The honourable member for Montmagny, Liselec, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, after 8 years in power, the Liberal government couldn't have done worse. Inflation is at its highest level in 40 years. Interest rates have risen 9 times in the last year after the Prime Minister and his Minister of Finance said as recently as 6 months ago that they'd stay low. As a result, young people can no longer dream of buying a house. The cost of rent has shot up. Grocery costs are rising steadily, and that's hurting families. After doubling the national debt, which will no doubt cost twice as much in interest, the government's proven beyond any doubt that it can't be trusted. And that's not to mention the justice system that's broken across Canada. Repeat offenders can serve their sentences in the community rather than in prison. Violence has increased by 32% since 2015. Gang violence is up 90% in that same period. It's time for this NDP Liberal coalition to let a competent team run the country. Madam Speaker, the Conservatives.
The questions orales. The honourable member Calgary-Forest Lawn.
After 8 years of failed Liberal policies driving up inflation, Canadians are faced with high interest rates, higher mortgage payments, and seeing home prices double across the country. An average monthly mortgage under this government has more than doubled, going from $1,500 to more than $3,000. Home ownership is also impossible and a pipe dream for 9 out of 10 young people, as 35-year-olds are forced to continue to live in their parents' basements. Let's be clear, Liberal inflation caused this mess. Will they apologize and take responsibility for pricing young Canadians out of homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, our plan not only makes life more affordable for Canadians, but is also fiscally responsible. We have confirmed our AAA credit rating. We have recovered 121% of our jobs lost during the pandemic, while the United States has only recovered 106%. We have maintained the lowest deficit and the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. That positions us very well to get inflation under control, improve affordability, and make sure that we create good, sustainable jobs for Canadians.
8 years of failed Liberal policies, Canadians have never had it so bad. And as Liberals continue to fist bump each other for spending hundreds of billions of dollars of other people's money, the results are absolutely horrific. 1 in 5 Canadians are completely out of money. 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals. And not only did Liberal inflation drive up the price of everything, they pile drive Canadians by raising taxes on them. Why are they so intent on taking more money from Canadians, leaving hardworking people and their family with less money and empty stomachs?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship.
Madam Speaker, I'm getting tired of listening to the Conservatives talk down Canadians and the Canadian economy. They should be getting to work to support Canadians in their time of need. We've made efforts through this pandemic to make sure that families could continue to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. We made efforts to make sure businesses could keep their doors open and the lights on. Every step of the way, they have opposed these measures. We're going to be there for Canadians in their time of need because it's the right thing to do. The Conservative strategy to combat inflation is to take more money away from families. We will be there for them in the time of need, no matter what it takes.
Yes, I want to remind members that when someone has the floor that they should be listening to the answer. They may not like the answer, but they should listen to it. The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn wasn't interrupted during his question, and I would ask the same respect for when the answers are there. So the Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
We won't take advice from the guy who broke the immigration system. And after 8 years, the Liberals continue to deny any responsibility for the Liberal inflation that they caused, causing all the pain on Canadians. But you know what? There's a list of random Liberals who prove that they are responsible. Tiff Macklem, who said inflation is homegrown. Mark Carney said inflation is a domestic issue. Bill Morneau admitted that the Liberals overspent. Even former Liberal Finance Minister John Manley said Liberal spending is fueling inflation. So should we believe these random Liberals that continue to say that everything is rosy and fine, or should we believe the other random Liberals who say it's their fault for causing inflation?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship.
Speaker, I'd point out to the honourable member who I had the pleasure of serving on the immigration portfolio with that during the next year we expect to welcome more than double the number of newcomers to this country than they did the last year that they formed government. Madam Speaker, at the same time, our strategy to support Canadians over the course of the pandemic, a once-in-a-century disaster, was successful in making sure that 9 million Canadians received CERB so they could keep food on the table. They opposed those measures. We introduced the wage subsidy that had 4.5 million workers kept on payroll so they could feed their families. They opposed those measures. They didn't just oppose them. Their leader held a press conference to say these are big, fat government programs. Conservatives would never support that. Canadians
The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition. It's quite ironic to hear the Liberals, Madam Speaker, day in, day out, claiming that everything is fine in this country because of their astronomical spending that has caused the country to face the greatest inflation in 40 years. The cost of food has skyrocketed, but they're not responsible. Rents have doubled. Not their fault. Interest rates are making it impossible for young families to dream of owning a home. Not their fault. Why, after 8 years, is this Prime Minister so irresponsible regarding the problems of Canadians? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, I understand the reasons for which the Conservatives find it hard to connect with Quebecers. It's because their economic policy is simply one of austerity and cuts. On this side of the House, we have implemented a number of measures to support Canadians and Quebecers. We increased benefits for seniors. We created a new benefit to help families pay for their rent. We have created a subsidy program for dental care for youth. every single time the Conservatives voted against. The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition. We have to listen to the Minister. But listen to us. They are still boasting. After 8 years, they are so disconnected from reality. Middle-class families are increasingly turning to food banks. An ever greater number of Quebecers, and we saw in the news this morning, have to find a second job simply just to pay for food. Seniors, after having worked hard all their lives, are now asking for help to eat. Once again, the Minister will tell us how much they've done to help, but the real question is, why, and that she should be asking herself, is why are so many people suffering after 8 years of this Prime Minister? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, it is true that the world economic situation is unstable, and that is the reason for which we have to be here to support Canadians and Quebecers, Madam Speaker. I don't understand how my colleague can claim to have compassion for Canadians who are finding it hard to make ends meet, whilst voting against measures that will actually help them out, Madam Speaker. We will always be here to support Canadians. For Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, Quebec schools are feeling the full impact of Roxham Road. Since the start of the school year last September alone, Quebec has had to open 224 new classes just to accommodate the children of asylum seekers. 224 new classes, while we are in the midst of a teacher and specialist shortage. 224 new classes, the vast majority in the Montreal area, where schools are already filled far beyond capacity. There is a human cost to this, and I'll come back to that. But first of all, is the federal government committed to footing the bill, at least footing the bill? The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Madam Speaker, we must respect our internal and external commitments for asylum seekers. I have a meeting today with my Quebec counterpart so that we can continue to support asylum seekers and to continue to respect international and domestic rules and regulations. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, we are short-staffed in our classrooms. We simply cannot give our teachers more and more children who don't speak French and who are more likely to have special needs. The elastic is stretched to the very limit. To pull it further is to cut the quality of education offered to all children. Quebec does not have the resources to deal with all the asylum seekers on Roxham Road by itself. That is the reality of the matter. When will the government finally suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement and distribute the reception of asylum seekers across Canada? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, my colleague would simply just shift the problem elsewhere. It is essential to have a strategy in collaboration with the province of Quebec.
Counterparts in Quebec, as we have to support efforts to provide housing for asylum seekers, as we have to support healthcare for asylum seekers. I have a meeting this afternoon with Minister Frechette to discuss some of these issues, and I look forward to continuing our partnership to collaborate as we move towards a long-term solution with a modernized Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States.
The honourable member from Westminster Burnaby.
Canadians can't get their sick children care because our hospitals are struggling with staffing shortages. Nursing vacancies are up by 494% since the Liberals took office. That's almost 29,000 unfilled nursing positions in hospitals and clinics across the country. In the last election, the Liberals promised to hire thousands of healthcare workers. Incredulously, they've done the opposite, Madam Speaker. Why is the Prime Minister letting staffing shortages get worse and failing to protect Canada's universal public health care that is so important to Canadians?
Hear, hear.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health and Sports.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We share the deep concerns that Canadians have regarding the significant challenges that our healthcare system is experiencing. We recognize that urgent actions are necessary to address the current healthcare worker crisis. In fact, Madam Speaker, in the Health Committee, we've just finished our study on the human resources challenge in healthcare, and we're continuing to work with provinces and territories to deliver real results for people. That's better access to family health teams, including more doctors, more nurses where there aren't enough, better access to digital health information, better mental health care, and helping to age with dignity, things that Canadians need. We will always be here to support and stand up for our public universal health care system.